When I was 13, my worldview was changed by a simple idea. I was walking home from school with a friend of mine, and we were debating religion. He was religious, I wasn't. And it seemed clear to me that he only believed what he believed because of his upbringing. And a thought experiment popped into my head. Imagine you'd been swapped at birth with another baby and raised in a totally different faith. Don't you think now you'd be defending with the same passion those set of beliefs, that religion, instead of your current beliefs? Isn't it obvious that you're only saying what you're saying because of the lottery of your birth? And I realised, didn't the same thing apply to me? Everything about me, my beliefs, the language I spoke, my habits, it had all happened to me. I hadn't chosen any of it. And the more I thought about it, the more evident it became that everything about who we are can be traced to genes and environment. When you take into account our biological inheritance, the treatment we receive from parents, siblings, teachers, and peers, the machinery with which we make our decisions has been constructed by a process far beyond our control. This process determines the architecture of our neural circuitry, the way our brains are wired. It determines everything about us. If we don't create our own brain, we can't truly be responsible for the choices that follow from it. The idea that we can be, I like to call the myth of responsibility. So yes, we make choices, but we do so with a brain that we didn't choose, in circumstances not of our making. And by the time we have the critical faculties to question our identity, we're very much in possession of one. Of course, we can decide to change aspects of who we are and the way that we live our life, but the way in which we want to change and our success in doing so will be determined by how we already are as a result of genes and experience. In the end, luck is what separates the rich from the poor, the saint from the sinner, the powerful from the powerless. So notions of credit, blame, punishment, and responsibility cease to make much sense. In other words, no one is more deserving of happiness or suffering than anyone else. So does all this mean that free will is an illusion? If free will refers to the ability to act in accordance with the beliefs and values we hold, to employ reason and learn from our mistakes, then it's certainly within our grasp. But if free will is the capacity to be truly responsible for our actions, then no, we don't have it. Now, if ultimate responsibility is a myth, it follows that no one is truly blameworthy. So retribution, a form of punishment in which the suffering of someone is viewed as an end in itself, well, that becomes unjustifiable. Of course, this doesn't mean we should let violent criminals or corrupt bankers walk free. We still have a right to defend society from those who pose a dangerous threat. And it's still important to establish incentives for socially beneficial behaviour. But even with incentives, we have to be careful, because they often don't work as we might think. For instance, people often assume that more severe punishments are more effective deterrents. Yet prisoners in countries with longer, harsher punishments are actually more likely, not less, to reoffend. The evidence indicates that it's not so much the severity of the punishment as much as the likelihood of getting caught that most effectively deters criminal behaviour. And it's telling that the lowest reoffending rate in Europe is to be found in its most humane prison, on the island of Bastøy, in Norway. Now, the more fundamental objection to the logic of deterrence is a moral one. The influential American jurist, Oliver Wendell Holmes, once said, "If I were having a philosophical talk with a man I was going to have hanged or electrocuted, I'd say, I don't doubt that your act was inevitable for you, but to make it more avoidable for others, we propose to sacrifice you to the common good. You may regard yourself as a soldier, dying for your country if you like. But the truth is, mistreating or executing someone to dissuade others from socially harmful behaviour is a crude application of utilitarian logic. It's based on the proposition that we should do whatever is necessary to maximise well-being. I mean, it sounds good, but it can be used to rationalise awful behaviour. For instance, this logic could be used to justify killing one healthy person and harvesting their organs to save 5 sick people. Yet in the area of criminal justice, it's obscured by our cultural commitment to the responsibility myth, which makes it seem unproblematic to harm lawbreakers to benefit the wider society. Indeed, studies show that the stronger our commitment to the responsibility myth, the more we blame victims, support harsher punishments, and view the world as fair and just. But when we diminish the liberty of an individual to protect society, we have an obligation to reduce their suffering, not increase it, and where possible to rehabilitate them. Like someone afflicted with a contagious disease, the threat they pose is not of their own making. With identical genes and experiences, anyone in this room would pose precisely the same threat. The trouble is, the more we pretend that a lawbreaker is truly responsible for their actions, the more we blind ourselves to the deeper causes of their behaviour. And this just increases the chances of reproducing the conditions that enabled that behaviour to occur. And perpetuating these conditions, poverty, inequality, corruption, is always the deeper crime. So how would a rational justice system be different? Well, at the very least, it would put an end to retribution, it would employ the logic of deterrence sparingly and only within strict humanitarian limits, and most importantly, it would prioritise rehabilitation, which decades of research has shown to be the most efficient way of lowering reoffending rates. So the path to freedom is paved with understanding, not ignorance. In this instance, understanding that the way we are is ultimately down to luck. To transcend notions of blame and responsibility is to foster empathy and compassion. When you realise that had you lived someone else's life, you'd be doing exactly what they're doing, a profound equality emerges, one that prevents us from putting ourselves, in any deep sense, above or below anyone else. This kind of empathy can be a revolutionary force for good. I'm talking about unbounded empathy, which flies high above the borders we impose on the world, which transcends the attributes of race, gender, religion, class, and nationality. When multiplied across society, is a powerful liberating force, which in this time of turmoil and crisis is our best chance of turning conflict into peace, division into unity, and hate into compassion.